I have no fear of knowing and making a statement that there is no way that color has anything to do with designating the skill, the capability, the desire of an individual. If you have that drive and you have given the opportunity, there's nothing you can't accomplish. I believe that. I was born December the 16th, 1918 in Hiawatha, Kansas. My parents came to Kansas City, Kansas when I was 3 years old. Graduated from high school in 1936. I was drafted into the service in October of 1942. Sent to Leavenworth, Kansas for introduction, I guess, to the service. Went from there to, I believe it was St. Louis, Missouri, Jefferson Barracks. That lasted just a short period of time. They booked us with clothing and whatnot and shipped one group to Boston, Massachusetts, where I entered the Franklin Institute of Technology, assigned to do topographic drafting. We went from there to Marshfield, California. Stayed in Marshfield for about 90 days, I believe. In the meantime, on the bulletins coming in, there was an opportunity to be a part of the Cadet Corps for those who felt they had the audacity to think they could fly. Just a blessing as far as I'm concerned, and an opportunity that seemed like it was right in front of me. All I had to do was work for it. I submitted to take the exams. I left Marshfield, California, and went from there to Tuskegee, Alabama, having my first experience going south. Quite an experience, too. Colored entrances, black drinking fountains, white drinking fountains, doorways, exit and coming in and going out, black entrance. And walking down the street, as you come in contact or pass by a person of different color, a Caucasian, you had to get off the sidewalk and let them pass. My first introduction to segregation in the Deep South. Most of our instructors were people of color. Our company commander was a Caucasian, but I don't know that any of the students had any difficulty. But I enjoyed it, I'll say that. I enjoyed the lifestyle that I had. The opportunity to fly a plane was something I never dreamed about being able to do. It was the latter part of the year of 43 or the early part of 44 when I became a part of the cadet program. And fortunately for me, carrying 5 stripes, they permitted me to go in as an aviation student. We flew our training missions in a 2-wing fixed landing gear PT-17 as a primary trainer. When you complete that satisfactorily, you advance to basic. Lower basic is the first step, and upper basic is the second step. You spend about anywhere from 60 to 90 days in each one of the particular phases of training. You advance to your first step with a retractable landing gear, AT-6, 2-seater, instructor in the back, student in the front. And this was just like something new for me. So But I'm gung-ho as far as reading the books, studying the manuals, going out and becoming familiar with what I was supposed to do, and following the rules. That's all it took. Just like driving the car, the more you drive it, the better you drive. I graduated at Class 45C in 1945. We started off with, I think, 45 individuals. We graduated 23. After graduation, we were sent to Walterboro, South Carolina, in preparation of being shipped overseas.
Throughout the world, throngs of people hail the end of the war in Europe. It is 5 years and more since Hitler marched into Poland. Years full of suffering and death and sacrifice. Now the war against Germany is won.
When we went to Walterboro, South Carolina, with the idea that we were going to be shipped overseas, and then to find out, even after graduation, all the gunnery training and skeet shooting and pistols and that sort of thing as far as on the firing range, and then to be told that there was no need to be shipped overseas and learn that you were more or less excess baggage was quite a disappointment to me. When you get around a group of veterans who served in this war and in that war, and they went on this adventure and they tore up this town or bombed this train, or you feel like you just a lost cause. You're part of the team, but you sit on the bench all the time, watch all the others do the work. That bothered me, and still does. I guess they had a lot of excess baggage as far as the commissioned officers were concerned. So in order to try to get rid of some of them, they shipped us to Godman Field, Kentucky. During our stay at Godman Field, Kentucky, you had an opportunity to stay in as a mandatory 3 years. Well, in my case, I decided that 3 years was just a little bit more than I'd want to volunteer to stay in. I would like the idea of resuming my obligation of taking care of my parents, marrying the young lady to whom I had been engaged for some time, and getting back to the small-time job as a projectionist, providing that job was still available. Drafted off of a job, go in as a civilian, and come out as a commissioned officer was quite a successful thing for me. And I consider that a blessing from the good Lord. And very proud to have been able to have accomplished what I did. So I left the service in November of 1945 and came home, and a year after, married the young lady to whom I had been engaged. I have known her from the time she was in junior high school. She was about 15 years of age then, and I was 21. We dated all that time until September the 18th of 1946 was our marriage date. And she was 21 years of age, and I was almost 27. And have the opportunity of rearing 4 sons, and I have 7 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. Unfortunately, they lost their mother in November the 5th in 1997. Barbara and I were married for 51 years and 1 month, from September 1946 to November 1997. Occupied both in the post office, had my own lawn service, went to Kansas City Art Institute to get my Bachelor of Fine Arts and my Master of Fine Arts degrees, and stayed busy with 2 jobs for some 30 years. I enjoyed the fact that I was able to do what some people say that a black man is not able to do. He does not have the mechanical, the intellectual skills to do many of the things that are necessary to qualify as a pilot, a bombardier, or a navigator. And so many of the people who graduated from Tuskegee and the other training schools proved that to be a false. And whether your face is black, polka dot striped, or whatnot, it doesn't matter if you have a desire and the blessing of the good Lord to achieve whatever you put up your mind to do.
I was born in 1926, and I was raised on the East Coast in a little town called Leonia.
In a chance hit, a bomb went down a smokestack of the Arizona and exploded the forward magazine.
When the war started, I was 15 years old, and my grandfather and my sister and myself were listening to his little radio. He had one of the old-fashioned radios, and we heard that Pearl Harbor had been hit.
The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces.
And so my grandfather says, well, the country's going to be at war, and pretty soon the president came on and talked. And of course, I was too young, but I knew eventually I'd probably go into service.
On fire, and the Oklahoma has capsized. And in the bomb and
a friend of mine came home from the service. He'd been injured, and he asked me what I was going to do. And I said, I don't know. He said, well, why don't you try the Tuskegee Airmen? That's what got me interested in the Tuskegee Airmen. I'd never heard of them. So I asked my mother if she would sign up for me, and she said, well, yeah, I guess I can. And when my 18th birthday showed up, so did a letter from the Defense Department, and it wasn't long before they told me where I was supposed to meet the bus to go to Fort Dix. I talked to my father about it, and he says, well, look, I'm going right by where you're supposed to meet the bus. So I was going to war, and he was going to work. Yeah, I went into service on the 20th of July, 1944. Keesler Field, Mississippi was where we had basic training. When we left Keesler Field, they just sent us up to Tuskegee, and so then the adventures at Tuskegee started. Well, what I did, I had applied for aviation cadets, and I made aviation cadets, and I finished primary. When I got to basic, they washed me out. You never know why they're going to wash you out, other than they just wash you out when they get ready. So I got washed out on that, but I stayed in the service. I decided that I was going to stay in, and I did. Well, I was charged of quarters one day, and I got through early. And so I got down behind the clothes where nobody could see me, and I went to sleep. And the next thing I know, I hear something say, hey, soldier, wake up. So I woke up, and there was the first sergeant. I'm looking at all these stripes. I'm saying, oh, I'm in real trouble. I felt like Beetle Bailey. Anyway, he said, you come with me. So I went over to the orderly room. He says, he wanted to know if I could read and write, and a lot of guys could not during that time. So I said, yeah, I can read, and I said, I can write, and he said, okay, you're the mail clerk. So I was the mail clerk and assistant. I just did whatever he wanted me to do. So then he got to the place where in the morning, instead of him going out and calling the roll, he'd tell me, he said, go out and set up and get the troops ready. And then the chief clerk decided he was going to get out and go back to school. So the first sergeant said, asked me, he said, I need somebody to be the chief clerk. So they sent me to quartermaster school at Camp Lee, Virginia. So I was chief clerk of the squadron, and the next thing I know, they changed my MOS, called me up to headquarters and told me they wanted me to be the base sergeant major. So then they made me the sergeant major of the base, and I was the last base sergeant major at Tuskegee Army Airfield. When they closed the base from Tuskegee, I went to Lockburn. It was called RIF, Reduction in Force. When they deactivated the 332nd, then they riffed me. That's when they put me out. And then when I got out of the service, I became a police officer at home. And I was a police officer for something like 3 months. And then I got letters asking me to come back in. So one day I walked in, took my keys, badge, gun, everything, laid it on the desk and said, "See ya." And I went back in the military, never turned back. When I went back in, I went back to Lockburn as a three-stripe sergeant. And they sent me overseas to Guam. And while I was overseas to Guam, I wrote for the Stars and Stripes. And I was over there 6 months, came back and went to OCS, and that's when I got my commission. And the 332nd was at Lockburn, and I was assigned to the 100th Fighter Squadron, and I was adjutant for Elwood T. Driver. He was my squadron commander. I went to Cheyenne, Wyoming, Fort Francis C. Warren, and that's when I decided I wanted to fly again. So then I applied for RO training, which was radar officer training, and that's when I got my wings. We won the first airborne gunnery meet for single-engine jet fighters. And General LeMay heard about it, and he said, well, let's combat ready. You guys are going to defend my fuel tanks up at Thule, Greenland. So we were assigned to Thule, Greenland. We were up there for 14 months on a 9-month tour. I came back from Greenland and I went to Scott Air Force Base. I didn't fly anymore after that because I became a full-time senior manpower officer, and so that's what I did finished my career. During the course of my military experience, I had an opportunity to get my master's degree and my PhD on off-duty time, and you just have to concentrate and stay with it until you get it. I was in the service for about 27 and a half years. I'm proud to have had the opportunity to serve. When I got out, I came into the Civil Air Patrol, and I became a commander of the Kansas wing of Civil Air Patrol, yes. Maddie is a registered nurse, and I met her at Scott Air Force Base. She was working as a reservist there, and then she worked in the city hospital in St. Louis, and I was stationed at Scott. We got to talking, and she was fun to talk to, and she's really rather pretty. So I wanted to see what she looked like in a swimming suit. So I asked her, I asked her, I said, you want to go swimming? And she said, well, I'm not a swimmer. I said, well, you know, we can go splash in the water. And we did. So we got to be good friends, and it just kind of grew a little bit. I went over to overseas, and then while I was over there, they had this meeting at Hickam Air Force Base. So I called her up, and I said, if you want to get married, that's what I said, if you want to get married, you have to come to Hawaii. And so she did, and we've been roommates ever since. She was a career reservist. There's a funny little tale that goes with that. I had to give a speech up at Emporia State. So I'm there speaking, and one of the students that was in there asked me, well, how did you get along? You're a major and she's a lieutenant colonel. How does that work out? I asked the guy, I said, have you been married? And that stopped that conversation right in its tracks. We have 2 children and we have 2 grandchildren. Now, the grandchildren's father passed away. You know, I'm just proud of the fact that I had an opportunity to serve, because we went to Iraq and Kuwait and Qatar. The Tuskegee Airmen did. It's an honor to be asked to help serve the country. I don't have a problem with that in any way at all, about anything. We knew what was going on, and we knew how things were structured. We knew what we were faced with, but really the only thing we were concerned about was getting the war over so we could go back home. We didn't have that concept of the Tuskegee Airmen, because that wasn't what we were about. We were about ending the war and going home. That's what we were all about. We didn't even know what a Tuskegee Airman was. I'm just honored to have been a part of it, and I hope that the service that I rendered did some good. I like to know I'm serving the country. If I'm going to serve the country, I've got to have a purpose.